There's a place He comes to me. Though I'm blind, He helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see Him face to face.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Face to Face, we'll be in the book of Matthew. So grab your Bibles and let's get started. If you want to hear this complete message in its entirety, go to yourneighborhoodchurch.com, where you can download Your Neighborhood Church app at the App Store. But we know from John's Gospel that Jesus was first brought to Annas' house, who was the former high priest, because the people, they still treated Annas as the real high priest. So Jesus, he was first questioned and he was beaten by Annas. And then Annas, he sent Jesus to Caiaphas, bound. And he had to do that because Caiaphas, he was the official high priest, and he was the only one that Rome would recognize. And both of these men, Annas and Caiaphas, they were both Sadducees, which means neither of these guys, they believed in miracles. They didn't believe in a resurrection of the dead. They believed in nothing spiritual. Though both of these men have seen with their own eyes a flood of people, a constant parade of people being healed, going to the temple to offer their sacrifices for their healing. And you think especially those lepers, because with the lepers, the priests had to actually examine them to declare them clean. But we also know there were paralyzed people, there were blind people, and then there's all the unmentioned people that we never heard about. And these guys, they saw this daily, and it never changed their hearts. So now, before Caiaphas, they gather everybody they can get from the Sanhedrin, at least those that are in agreement with their position. And so they begin their illegal nighttime trial. And this trial was illegal according to the Sanhedrin's own laws, because all the trials had to begin and end during the daylight hours. And this is why that after this trial in the night, the Sanhedrin, they had to meet again in the morning, so to appear that this verdict of the sentence of death was legal, because a night trial had no legal standing. And if you remember, that the only thing that those plotting to take Jesus away by trickery and to kill him that we read about in the last chapter, that was before Judas had made his deal, all they wanted was for this not to happen during the Passover feast. And that's because the Sanhedrin, by its own laws, criminal cases could not be heard during the Passover season. And if anyone was found guilty in a capital case, in a death penalty case, that person, they couldn't be killed that day. There had to be a 24-hour waiting period, because what they did is they gave that amount of time just in case someone had a conscience of mercy. So here, the Sanhedrin, they had to violate their own rules to rid themselves of Jesus. But because of their hatred, it was worth it for them. And Jesus, he lived his whole life in the public eye. And so it was difficult for the Sanhedrin to find even false testimony against him. And so it had to be fabricated. So they had to find some wicked men who would sympathize with them and to actually change the words of Jesus to make him sound like he was a terrorist, that he wanted to blow up the temple when he was only talking about his own body being destroyed. And they knew it all, or else they would have arrested Jesus at the time when he said it. But nobody touched him then. And through all this, Jesus, he just remained silent, and he said nothing. And then the high priest questions him, and he says, "Do you say nothing?" And Jesus still said nothing, until the high priest put Jesus under an oath and commanded him to speak and said, "I put you under an oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." And that was the only question that the high priest had. He didn't ask him about the temples being destroyed. He didn't ask him about Jesus's allegiance to the laws of Moses or to Rome. Caiaphas's only question was, are you the Christ? And Jesus' answer was short. It is as you said. And then Jesus, he added something else. He added what it's going to look like the next time Caiaphas would see him. And he said that hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven. And if you notice in your Bibles, that word, the power is capitalized because what Jesus is referring to there, he's referring to God. Because this was just a respectful way to say God, because the Jews didn't use the name of God carelessly. And so now Caiaphas, he can't stand this anymore. And so he tears his clothes, and then he has Jesus beaten, mocked, and abused. Now Peter, he shouldn't have been following Jesus at all, because Jesus had already warned Peter that he would deny him, and he's already secured his release. And now in John's gospel, it was a little bit more clear. Jesus had told his disciples not to follow him because he told the Romans, he said, let these go their way. And right here, Peter, he's not being bold and he's not being brave. He's playing secret agent disciple. And there's absolutely nothing that Peter will be able to do for Jesus. And so after John secures Peter's entrance, Peter doesn't stand with Jesus. And we're told in John that he just stands with the enemy and he keeps himself warm by the fire. And Peter here, he wasn't confronted by the soldiers and he wasn't confronted by the temple guard. And Peter, he wasn't tortured and he wasn't persecuted, but he fell under the pressure of the questions of two little slave girls. And Peter, he should have left at this point, because by this time, the rooster probably had at least crowed once, because in Mark's gospel, we're told that the rooster would crow twice. So the rooster was going to crow 2 times. And then this third person who comes and confronts Peter, well, he was probably a slave also, because he was the cousin of the high priest's slave whose ear Peter had cut off. And when he confronted Peter in John's gospel, he said, did I not see you in the garden with him? And he was talking about seeing Peter with Jesus, which literally means, did I not see you with my own eyes? And then Peter denied this, and he started cursing and swearing. And this doesn't mean he was using swear words or he was using bad language. This means he was calling out curses on himself, and he was putting himself under an oath. He was saying something like, if I'm not telling the truth, let me be damned. And then the second rooster crows. And we know from Luke's gospel account, at this very moment, Jesus turned around and he looked at Peter. I don't think Jesus looked at Peter the way that I would have looked at Peter. I would have looked at Peter and I'd have been shaking my head and I'd be thinking, see, I told you, Peter. But I think Jesus looked at him in love, and he looked at him to strengthen Peter, because he doesn't want Peter to become too despondent. He doesn't want him to think that he betrayed him the same way that Judas did. So even here, in the midst, literally, of Jesus' own trials, he's taking care of Peter. And Jesus is putting himself aside, and he's putting Peter first. And it was that look of love that broke Peter. And it sent this big fisherman running out into the night, crying bitterly. And that's a much different reaction than what Judas had. And all of this happened before probably about 3 a.m., because the Romans called this watch of the night from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. the cock crow, because that's the time that roosters normally would crow in Israel. Okay, so now the morning comes, and now the Sanhedrin, they meet officially, and it doesn't take them very long because they already have their verdict. But now it's official, and they bring Jesus bound to Pontius Pilate, the governor. And we know that at first Pilate, he tried to pawn this trial off on Herod because Jesus is from Galilee and Herod, that's Herod's jurisdiction. But all Herod did is he just sent him back to Pilate for Pilate to deal with it. And then we see that there was another disciple of Jesus watching all these trials, and that was Judas. And Judas, he wasn't very happy about the outcome. And you kind of wonder, well, what was he expecting? What was he expecting to come out of that? And now it says that he's remorseful. And in the King James translation, it says that Judas repented himself. But Judas is not repenting here. It's a different word being used. He's just remorseful. He's just feeling guilty. Because things, they don't quite feel the way that he thought they would feel. And this illusion that he had of how things would turn out in his mind with all the grandeur and with all those lies and promises that Satan had made to him, well, they're all gone now. So now all he feels is dirty and empty, and he feels condemned over his betrayal. Because Judas knows he was loved, and he knows that he betrayed that love. Now, this is what happens to all of us when we get caught up and we allow temptation to overtake us, where we may find ourselves betraying someone we love or betraying someone who loved us. And we do it for nothing, for just 30 pieces of silver, which is just a little more than a half a roll of quarters. And you can defend yourself and you can say, I've never betrayed anyone like that. Well, I can't say that. And I think that I can say that. We've all betrayed Jesus at times. And I can honestly say that there's not a week gone by where I haven't betrayed Jesus in some way. And there's this thing that happens when you've been used by the devil and where you've been deceived. And that after your sin has been committed and all the pleasures that you thought you would have had and all the things that you were going to get, that you were going to receive from the sin you committed, and you find that they're all gone. And now you're just sitting there and you're in your right mind, and all you feel is condemned and grossly empty. And you can't even stand yourself anymore, and you can't believe what you've done. How you could have been so carried away in your thoughts. But now all those thoughts are gone. And now that the deed's done, you can't undo it. It can't be undone. It was the devil that led you, and you were led. And you wouldn't have done those things if you were in your right mind. But now the devil's left you. And that one who incited you to sin has now become your chief accuser. And now he's condemning you, and he's condemning you mercilessly. Well, that's where Judas is here. That's where he is now. And he no longer wants his reward. That very thing that he coveted so badly, the thing he lusted for, the money, so he tries to return it. And they want no part of it. Those chief priests, they were so happy to receive him before, just like those people that were so happy to receive you before, who now wash their hands of you, and now they act like they don't know you. And now they let you know very clearly that you're never really one of us. You were never one of us.
You've been listening to Face to Face. Face to Face on this radio station has been provided by Your Neighborhood Church. If you want to help support Face to Face and put this program on other stations just like yours, you can contact us at yourneighborhoodchurch.com or write Your Neighborhood Church, P.O. Box 500, Romeo, Michigan 48065.
There's a place he comes to me. Though I'm blind, he helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
Tune in again tomorrow at this same time as we continue to go through the Bible.